three guidelines for this new round of funding through the Housing Trust Fund. So I hope you all know already what the Chatham Housing Trust Fund is, but if not, this is kind of a brief synopsis. You can look more in detail on the website for all of the nitty-gritty details, but it was created in 2018. It's funded out of the general fund, as well as the Article 46. It's a quarter penny tax that kind of highlighted housing as a priority. So they have some distinct details of those 6 details at the bottom of what specifically the Housing Trust Fund tries to prioritize, being close to grocery stores, public transportation, and then it has some kind of nebulous things too. What exactly these means and what success looks like for different projects. And we'll get into kind of the details of how we rank those a little bit further on in this presentation and how we actually hit these different priorities and goals. But who can apply? You need a valid tax ID number. You need to be in existence for at least 3 years. And probably the biggest thing is that we have to be able to prove that the public funds that we are expending are for the public. There's a pretty simple formula for what that looks like, and it basically just requires that we are able to show that we can get our money's worth. So for instance, just to make the math easy, let's say that market rent would be $2,000 for a unit. You promise for 10 years it's going to be at $1,000. So 1,000 times 12 is 12,000. 10 years, that's $120,000 of benefit from whatever thing it was. So if you were applying for less than $120,000, it would be quote unquote getting your money's worth. That's basically what that final requirement on this slide is about. And then the other thing is that all proposals must address these following things. So at least 20% of the development must be affordable to 120% of area median income or below. That table is on the website as well, along with the full application. So you can see specifically what those are. And we weight and prioritize folks who target lower incomes than this higher. That's a higher priority, basically. You have to comply with zoning, obviously, and it has to be in Chatham County. So. What a complete application includes. So you need to fully fill out the application, which is listed on the website. It's at this link here. And there's a number of other attachments that go along with that. So the sources of funds and development budget table. The sources of funds is where you get your money from for your project. The development budget is what you spend your money on. Both of those are 1 page long, basically. They're pretty simple. Same thing goes for the disclosure of past or current investigations and the disclosure of conflicts of interest and non-discrimination, basically ensuring that you're taking steps to not discriminate in your own procurement and disbursement policies and all that kind of thing. Both of those are also very simple forms. They're 1 page long, but they have to be signed by your executive director and a chairperson of your organization or whatever equivalent that might be. So that might be a bit of a heads up if that person at your organization is kind of hard to get a hold of. That is kind of coming down the line. And then the last thing, this is just for new applicants, is the vendor application and electronic fund transfer form. That is so that Chatham County can literally pay you, like put the money from their bank account in your bank account. So all those forms can be submitted via email. They're all online fillable, and they can be submitted to both of these email addresses. One of them is mine and one of them is for the Housing Trust Fund. And you can download all of those at that website. And I can also get that link out to everybody after this presentation is over. I also wanted to include this slide like I said earlier with this first slide, it can seem kind of nebulous at the front to have these priorities that are kind of up in the air, and this is how we actually measure those different priorities. So there are 3 different tiers of points that you can receive. We look, we rank and score in each of those different tiers, and if you tie on one tier, then we'll use the subsequent tiers as kind of like a tiebreaker. So there's 145 points in tier 1, 45 points in tier 2, and 40 kind of bonus points. In general, the categories, that tier 1 is, are you able to accept this money, and is it really looking at the kinds of things that the Housing Trust Fund is supposed to be being used for? And tier 2 and tier 3 is more about how innovative the project is, if the site is kind of in alignment with those values and that kind of thing. So I have some of the bigger point categories pulled out to give you a more specific idea. But like the biggest categories, what AMI population are you targeting? If you're targeting lower income, you're going to get more points in that category. Same thing, affordability restrictions. If you agree to a longer restriction, you're going to get more points here. So those big chunky priorities are the ones where you're going to get big chunky amounts of points. And then it goes down from there. Once again, these tables, the full tables with all of the point amounts, are on the website right underneath where that application is. So if you want to see each and every single one of those points categories, you're welcome to look at them. But these are kind of the highlights. The application timeline. So this is getting down into it. If you're still interested in applying, this is how you might want to do it. So we released the application on the 10th. You might have gotten that email. If you had applied before, we sent that out to everybody, along with a couple of other folks that we thought might be interested. And if you're here, you're involved in some of our advertisement for the Housing Trust Fund. The deadline for submittal for these is November 27th, 2023 at 1 p.m. I believe that's a Monday. It's kind of sneaking up on us. It might seem like it's a couple weeks away, but there is kind of a holiday week in between now and then, so it's closer than it seems. After those applications are in, and we know for sure we have everybody who is applying, Leah and I will be doing some of the preliminary screening of those. So going back to this slide, some of these different points categories are rather objective, like what percent AMI population you're targeting, those kinds of things we will rank and score. The ones that are more qualitative, the ones that kind of require interpretation, we bring those to the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee for them to review. So they'll kind of have a week to do that between when the applications close and when they have their next meeting, which is on the December 7th. And at that meeting, the goal is to have a list of projects that we recommend funding. So at that meeting, we will kind of decide which ones we will recommend to the county commissioners. And then the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee will take those recommendations to the commissioners' next meeting, which is on January 15th of 2024. Hopefully they accept them at that meeting. And if they do, we will send out the confirmation of awards right after that on the 31st. So after that, we will be working on contracts. The reason that that is a squishier deadline of just spring 2024 is kind of depends on the type of project, how long the contract takes to prepare. If it is a large, preparation for a low-income housing tax credit, that might be more involved than doing 1 or 2 units, like a rehab on 1 or 2 units. So But within spring 2024, we'll make the contracts. And then throughout those times, depending on when contracts are created, the awards will be dispersed. One more thing that I forgot to put on here is usually about 6 months after receiving the award, the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee reaches back out to awardees to kind of ask them for an update. That's because every December, the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee reports on what it did to the commissioners over the course of the year, and they like to have some narrative to warm the heartstrings of county commissioners everywhere about things that we've used our funds for. So it's not a big involved process, but that's something to look out for as well.